Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode. Hey, Sid, what's going on?
Becca, oh man, I'm on cloud nine right now. Huge win for the Lady Vols tonight.
You know, I couldn't wait to talk to you because I knew both of us were going to be smiling from ear to ear, but especially you.
It's a historic win, right? Historic rivalry for the Lady Vols. And why it's an historic win for us is we haven't beaten them since 2007. So it was a big dry spout there. And a lot of the younger generation, and even you, Becca, when you were at Notre Dame, knows the Notre Dame UConn rivalry. And some players of the young generation are going to say, well, that's UConn's rival. But if we go back 30 years ago, back when Pat and Gino were duking it out, it was that good old-fashioned Tennessee UConn rivalry. So both of us were probably excited to see UConn lose tonight.
Definitely. The Tennessee UConn is a rival as old as time. One for the ages. It's one we grew up watching. That's what I think is the best part, is it's kind of coming full circle back around. And it's just exciting. UConn has dominated. We're not going to knock that. They have dominated. So it's really cool to see when Notre Dame started beating them, when South Carolina started beating them, and now to have Tennessee come up there too. It's just making all those top programs. There's more for them to chew. It's more for them to, you get recruits, you get better seeds, you have an upset. It's fun. It's a ton of fun. But I know we're going to get into that, but let's quickly go through some of our quarters and then we'll jump right into it. So our first one, obviously, we're going to dig into some games. We got two that we're going to highlight. Second quarter, we're going to do a little bit of the high lows, pun intended. We'll dig into that later. Third quarter, we're feeling 22. There's been a couple jersey retirements we wanted to highlight, both 22s. And then lastly in our fourth quarter, we have some in the news, some drama. We said we would always bring you something when we heard it. So something came up. A lot of people have spoke up about it. So wanted to bring it. And then quick overtime is just going to be highlighting some really good upcoming matchups this weekend. So let's get right into it, Sid. First quarter, let's roll.
So our first quarter is all about those two games we wanted to highlight. The first game here is number 1 UCLA defeating number 8 Ohio State. They win that game 65-52 at UCLA. Heading into this one, UCLA is 21-0, now 22-0. And this is only Ohio State's second loss. So if we remember back, they had lost to Penn State, which Penn State is not a very good team, just to be honest there. They lose that one to Penn State at Penn State, and now they had their second loss here as they lose to UCLA. But losing the number 1 team in the country, not necessarily a bad thing here. I think Ohio State, for the most part, hung with UCLA. Overall, now Ohio State is sitting at a 20-2 record. Ohio State, big story in this game. If you look back, they shot just under 30% from the floor. They were 20 for 68. I think that hurt them quite a bit. UCLA out-rebounded Ohio State 13-2 in the fourth quarter alone, and went on a 19-1 run also in the fourth. So UCLA really put this one away in the fourth quarter. It's like that whole thing of, we're the number 1 team in the country. You're here on our court, and we're going to absolutely take care of business and seal the deal. And they did that in the fourth quarter here. And a lot of that is some of the star power that we see out of UCLA and what they bring with Lauren Betts and Kiki Rice and how well they play together as a team. And Ohio State just, in my opinion, didn't have enough, right? They don't have enough of that scoring from multiple players to defeat UCLA. And I think that was a big thing. Obviously, Cody McMahon's going to bring what she brings. She is the biggest player right now for Ohio State. They have a freshman point guard who's really good. I mean, Ohio State's good. Don't get me wrong. They're ranked 8th in the country. Just not enough with UCLA. And I think that was really the story throughout the night is just they couldn't really stop Lauren Betts. It was interesting to watch how UCLA really relied on that high-low game, that buddy pass from the top down. Lauren Betts is amazing at sealing and getting position. She swims right under, gets that seal, and that lob pass is coming. And she's huge. She's 6'7", I think it is. I
Yep,
mean,
yep.
how do you stop that lob pass? And I think UCLA was able to exploit Ohio State in that way. And Ohio State, they run that 2-2-1 full court press the whole game. UCLA wins this one, even though they had a season high 23 turnovers. Ohio State forces an average of 25 turnovers per game. So UCLA didn't necessarily handle the Ohio State pressure all that well. But because of the scoring dominance down low for Lauren Betts and the presence she brings, because of the maturity of Kiki Rice isn't going off and scoring a ton of points for UCLA right now. But if you watch her game, she's so well-rounded. She's huge in what they do offensively. She's a steady Eddie on defense. And those two to me are just two of the best players in the country right now. Kiki Rice isn't one of the best guards. She's not up there with like a Hannah Hidalgo or a Paige Beckers or some of those top dogs, the Juju Watkins, but she's right underneath them in what she does as a floor general and what she does from a leadership perspective to me. Really seeing her step up as a leader this year, which is really cool for Kiki Rice. And overall, UCLA gets the win on this one. Cambridge had 21 points to lead Ohio State. McMahon chipped in 14. Lauren Betts had 19 points and 14 rebounds. Let's just mention that how dominant she is on her double-doubles. Like, how do you stop this chick right now? Unbelievable. Gabriella added 17 points and Rice had 12. Again, Rice not scoring a ton of points right now, but she does everything else and just really a powerful presence on the court. I wanted to ask you, Becca, because I know you watched this one as well. Let's talk about Lauren Betts. You were a post player. You played against some of the best post players that have played the game, some of the best scorers that have played the game. Betts is very unique because of her size, almost like a Brittany Griner size when she's on the floor. She is in the conversation for National Player of the Year this year. She's getting a lot of that hype. So is Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame. Two complete opposite players just by looking at their size alone. Their positions are the exact opposite. But boy, are they the go-tos for their teams, and are they the difference makers in everything that they do? What are your thoughts on Lauren Betts and maybe a Hannah Hidalgo or somebody else that you feel like should be in that mix for National Player of the Year as we cross the midway point and almost to the end of conference play here? This is going to become even more of a conversation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Lauren Betts is the real deal. She is a great mix of, if we're just going to talk and we're comparing bigs and bigs, a great mix of Brittany Griner's height and athleticism, but Sedona Prince's versatility and mobility. Lauren Betts is that. She's that big, solid post who's a true post. That's what I think the game has kind of gone away from, is true, solid post players who can get, create, and keep your spacing inside, your dominance, your positioning, and she does it all every possession. It's not just here and there, it's up, and that's why she's so consistent. It is not just a quarter, 3 quarters. It's every time she is in there creating space, trying to get boards, creating hold and a seal, trying to get her teammates to see her, and they look for her. And that's old school basketball, right? That goes back to screen and roll action, look high, low, get it inside. And that is where their mismatch is, and they use it perfectly. The funny part is you mentioned Rice, and watching this game, she had just scored a sweet, nice, easy bucket, and I was like, holy cow, she only has 12? In my mind, she's just, as you mentioned, that floor general that brings that consistency, that presence, gets them in the offense and has them execute. And there's just, you can't score enough points to make up for that type of steady Eddie who's going to keep you in your offense, know the expectations on the defensive end, get them out in transition, and that's exactly what she does. Going back to Lauren Betts, I know, sorry, I just wanted to, Kiki Rice she didn't get enough hype for what she did in that game, but Lauren Betts is legit. I think she's going to be Player of the Year. I think the fact that she is, their team has had the record that they've had. They've upset South Carolina. I think it's more than just her points, right? If we were to go off of performance and numbers only, Hannah's up there, period. I mean, girls trying to go for a three-peat 30-point game. But Lauren has the double figures. Her stats are there. Plus her team is winning and having upset. So I think the total package makes it a better bet for Lauren Betts to be Player of the Year.
I agree. I think there aren't many teams, and I honestly can't think of one. I think Sedona Prince is a really good call, maybe at TCU, but is there a team out there that has a post player that could stop her? I mean, that's That's where I'm at. I just think that she's that dominant down low. But I want to ask you, Becca, because you're talking about Betts and Kiki Rice and some of the offensive play that they have and how dominant they are. What is UCLA missing that might hurt them in the tournament?
I think a consistent knockdown 3-point shooter, and a 3-point shooter that can also just shot fake, go in, one dribble, pull up. It's that mid-range to that 3-point game, that consistency. And Gabriella has brought it. I will say that. And even the UCLA coach highlighted this after, that she is that person that they rely on to win them games. I just think the consistency of her, and if you had another player that could come in and do that, it's just too inconsistent from the guard wing standpoint, right? Rice isn't putting up 30. Lauren Betts is doing her thing, but you have to have some guard and wings that collectively are going to get you at least a consistent, I'd say, 30 points between 2 or 3 of them a game.
Yeah, I think Gabriela Hawkeyes is having some good minutes lately. Like, she's a guard that's stepping up, but she's not stacking up to some of the guards like at Notre Dame or South Carolina and what they can bring from an explosiveness consistently. And then London Jones, she's one that we saw against South Carolina. She was whapping 3. She's capable of it, but maybe really hasn't brought it a ton consistently. And to your point, they need that every game in the tournament. They're going to get every single team's A game. It's tourney time. It's do or die. So I think those are awesome points. I think that that's probably where they are the weakness, because Lauren Betts is so good. It's magnified a little bit on the perimeter. And then to me, if I think about it, what maybe they're missing heading into the tournament is some of that experience.
Yeah. Yep.
And a lot of teams are going to not stack up to South Carolina and Dawn and all their returners and what they bring. And then you've got a UConn that's out there where Gino is in the Final Four almost every year. He's just been there. Paige was there last year. You've got USC, who maybe is also a little bit not as experienced, right? So they might have to play them at some point. Notre Dame's going to bring some experience because Nielle's been there.
Yeah.
And I think she's that steady Eddie for their team right now. So I just think it's interesting. UCLA, they're off to the best program start in history, and they're really breaking records left and right. Corey Close is the all-time winningest coach at UCLA at this point. So they're really kind of breaking through that ceiling right now, which is awesome. Let's have another team with the parity, another team that hopefully consistently can be really good and a contender. But does that hurt them this year? That's going to be interesting to see. Like, when I'm already considering this, like when I'm building out my bracket, do I take UCLA past that Final Four game? I don't know right now.
Yeah. And I think going back to all the games, right? At this point, some teams are only getting one shot at UCLA, if that. But all the other ones are watching what works, what doesn't, when it comes to how these teams are preparing for them defensively. You have to know going into even Big Ten tourney time that all that's going to change. The plan will change. Coaches will adapt. And I can't help but think it's going to be, a packed in zone or some sort of, they're throwing a double team anytime Lauren Betts touches it, right? Which is why I think that a 2-3 guard is super important for a kick out, consistent knockdown shot or a pull up, mid-range pull up.
Yep, absolutely agree. I think that's a solid point there. Let's jump into our second game here, and really the game I'm most excited about, because we are fresh off of the Lady Vols upsetting UConn. Number 19, Tennessee, 16-5 on the season, 4-5 in conference play, which is not great for the SEC, right? SEC, one of the toughest conferences for sure, but to be 4-5, that hurts a little bit as a Lady Vol. So this game was a chance for us to kind of get back on that map a little bit. We're playing number 6 UConn, who's 21-2, 12-0 in the Big East. Obviously, we've talked about it a ton here. The Big East isn't as strong as the SEC or the Big Ten or even the ACC this year. And UConn leads this series heading into this one 17-9, and they had won the last 4 meetings. So I mentioned it earlier, Tennessee hadn't won this one since 2007. And it's just such that rivalry game. If you think about Tennessee and UConn and what Pat and Gino did to really elevate the game of basketball, how they sharpened each other. It's that whole thing, like iron sharpens iron. You can tell that every year Pat was out to beat Gino and Gino was out to beat Pat. Like, they wanted to knock each other off that pedestal. And that was just such an awesome rivalry back then. And I think to what both of these programs have done, So both programs have the most NCAA championship wins. UConn has 11, Tennessee has 8. They've sent the most players to the WNBA. They've had the most players drafted. They've made the most Final Fours. So really, throughout the history of the women's game, these have been the top 2 teams. UConn has stayed much more relevant since Pat having to step down and was no longer the coach at Tennessee. We've really seen Tennessee take a little bit of a dip. And that's been hard, being a lady of all myself, to watch that, but it's just the reality. So to see Tennessee step back on our home court and get the win in Rocky Top is just huge for us. And it's against a good UConn team. You've got Paige Becker, who's one of the best guards in the country. AZ Fudd was out there tonight consistently playing the whole game. Sarah Strong, who's one of the best freshmen in the country. And UConn has some of these star-studded players, whereas Tennessee really doesn't. We've got Cooper, we've got Spear, we've got some of these players that are getting some hype, but they're not the Paige Beckers, Sarah Strong level. So to see Tennessee put together, in my opinion, first time in a long time, a full 40-minute game. Granted, there were a couple possessions that didn't look great, but for us, we really didn't have a lapse, and we really got off to a strong start that allowed us to win this one. And I think that was huge. That was missing in a few of the games earlier, especially in the January stretch. So we were talking about it earlier, Becca. Tennessee had lost 5 games in January by a total of 15 points, and against some good teams. So they had lost to Oklahoma by 1, LSU by 2, Vandy by 1, Texas by 4, and South Carolina by 7. So they were in a lot of those games that they lost, and to see them win tonight was amazing. I think back to the game, and we just watched it, but I finally thought that Tennessee on the offensive end looked like an offensive team. There were times in the half court where we had more ball movement, where we were attacking. And you had mentioned the last game that we talked about with Tennessee, how Tennessee finally looked like they were attacking the basket a little bit more and they needed to do more of it. I thought they were doing a little bit more of that consistently tonight. I thought that really helped. And then I think overall, it just was a back and forth game. There wasn't a huge deep run. Like we got down by 6 or 7 at one point, and I'm thinking, oh no, we've got to bring this back in, and we did, right? Like we answered those short little runs where we didn't let UConn go on a big, long, extended one. If anything, we went probably on one of the deeper runs later in the game, and UConn chips back a little bit. So I just really thought that Tennessee played good basketball, and that was good to see. Like it didn't look like, other than the very beginning when we had done 3 full substitutions by the 7:30 mark. 2.5 minutes into the game, we had substituted 3 different
19
times.
Players, yeah. 19 players to UConn's
unbelievable.
Like 3.
Right. So I really thought UConn was forced to play Tennessee's pace. And it's good to see that Tennessee, for the most part, in most of these games, even against good opponents, is dictating that pace, because that's the pace that Tennessee wants to play. They're trying to shoot 20 more times than their opponent. They're trying to run that full court press, and they're running the hockey style substitutions where she is going to substitute 5 in, 5 out. Granted, she'll leave Cooper in, she'll leave Spear in a little bit longer sometimes, but for the most part, 5 in, 5 out every 2 minutes. Like no exaggeration, because she expects players to go as hard as they can, and then they get that reprieve when they come back out. So we forced UConn to play that pace a little bit, which I thought was awesome. And I just really am on cloud 9 right now that we beat UConn, and it's just a good win for the Lady Vol program. We needed that. We want to keep that momentum going, but I'm just pumped. I have no other words.
No, you absolutely should be. Obviously, it was a great game to watch. The back and forth, as you mentioned, each team went on some runs. One thing that I'm going to say that might not make everybody thrilled, the thing to me, when you sub in so much as Tennessee does, and UConn doesn't, and you can see UConn getting tired, it's the mental lapses for me from the Tennessee's like defensive principles. You know, you have 5 in, 5 out so frequently, you're fresh legs in a sense. Don't get beat on an easy back door just because UConn is disciplined to read that and make you look bad, right? So there's little things like that. I know we've talked about just overall Tennessee's style of play and how that would really match up against, Gino is a high IQ type team. They're running their offensive sets, they're making their reads, and they're also just reacting. Another thing that just drove me bonkers is Tennessee gets a breakaway layup, and it's the girl who made the layup and 3 UConn players, but yet UConn outlets the ball and gets it back and gets an open transition layup because Tennessee is somewhere in the middle. So it's those little things that, and again, props to them. They won, they got through it, they gutted it out. I'm glad they won. But to me, I'm just like, it could be, you guys could be so much better. Like you see it and you have the subs every 5. If you just stay disciplined to keep the person in front of you and hustle your butt back on defense, imagine how that game and all those other ones that they lost by a total of 15 points total, how those would have went. And I know they're learning and they're trying to grow, and I you can see that even from this game compared to when they lost those other ones, even at Vandy by 1, right? So you can see the growth, and I know it'll get there. It's just you can almost taste it because they're just so athletic. They're rotating players in, fresh legs. It's like, do the little things right, and you should whop these teams, right? You could be top 5.
Yeah, I thought throughout the game at one point, we should be up by like 20 right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there were definitely, there's every game we have lapses on defense. I think it's hard watching that, having learned the defensive game from Pat and rotations and just not getting beat middle, all that good stuff, which we allow to happen. But I also thought we had missed some key shots. Like, so not even key shots, but like easy shots where I'm like, man, some of these should be falling and they're just not. Like, we're getting good looks. Like I thought tonight, Tennessee really got a lot of good looks on the offensive end, where that's where we're supposed to be capitalizing in the system that she's running. And we still win the game. Awesome to see. But I thought we could have won it by 20. And that's maybe me being greedy a little bit, but
no, I agree. And I think that's, as you kicked it to me to give some thoughts and feedback, awesome win. But that's all I kept thinking about, were those mental lapses where it didn't have to be this close of a game, and Rocky Top would have been rolling, right? Like this would have been, it's a highlight because they won and it's a historic rivalry, but you just can taste that there's more there, and it's exciting to see. And you obviously just want it sooner rather than later, especially before tournament. So come on, Lady Vols, come on.
Yeah, we've got to keep learning and growing, and this momentum needs to continue. I'm almost a little bit bummed that this wasn't an SEC win, but it's a great win overall for the program. I think it helps us knowing that we can knock off number 6 UConn. I'm over the moon for the legacy Lady Vols who played in that rivalry game back in the day against UConn. Obviously, we don't have Pat anymore, but to me, it's a win in her honor. Anytime we can beat Gino is a good win on Rocky Top. So I'm excited about that. We need to keep growing, right? This is a big win, the biggest win we've had all year. And we're going to have to continue to play through SEC, continue to play through SEC tournament, and then see what we can do in March. I've said this, right? Like, I don't think this is the year for Tennessee. I really don't. Like, I'm going to be shocked if we make a deep tournament run, to be honest. I don't think we have the pieces. And you mentioned it, like our defense isn't all that solid. There's times when we're giving up wide open layups on the other end because of this press what we want to run. And that kills me sometimes, but it's a part of the style. I get it. But when I think about this, next year could be huge for Tennessee. So it's like building towards that. We have the number 2 recruiting class in the country coming in. It's huge for us to retain that talent, develop that talent. And if we're going to play this style, there is no excuse next year of missing defensive rotations, of not knocking down jumpers we should knock down. And we got to capitalize on both ends a little bit more. So good win for the Lady Vols.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's go.
All right, let's jump into our second quarter. This one is, we're going to call it the high lows. A high-low is from a basketball term where you're at the high post and you throw it down to your low post player. Lauren Betts gets a killing off of this. But how we're going to talk about it is we're going to highlight some exceptional performances, and then we're going to talk about the lower seeds delivering an upset. So jumping in first, wanted to highlight Michaela Blakes from Vandy last week, had a season high and game high 53 points in their win over the Florida Gators. They ended up winning 99-86. This girl went 16 of 24 from the floor and 5 from 9 from the three-point line. Now, keep in mind, Michaela Blakes was kind of quiet until they beat Tennessee by her inbounding the ball and then following the play and getting a touch little layup back, right? So she kind of made her mark there, had big games, 53 points this girl put up. Props to her. Wanted to highlight her, give her kudos. I think that's absolutely amazing. Sid, what do you think of this?
Some teams score 53 points on some low scoring games. So that's amazing for sure.
Absolutely. Another one we wanted to highlight, and I know we've almost not been hard on her, but just expected a lot of her. We want to highlight Georgia Amore from the number 12 Kentucky Wildcats. She put up 43 points as they beat the number 13 seed Oklahoma. She was 15 of 22 from the floor. Now this is the Georgia Amore we're used to seeing from Virginia Tech, and maybe it's finally she's finally just found her groove. Sometimes, as a point guard new on a team, you're trying to get the girls in the offense, have them understand what the coach is wanting, the weight of the world's on your shoulders for you to score. And I think she just finally decided, like, I'm going to take over. I have to. And by doing so, she was able to hold off the number 13 ranked Oklahoma Sooners and kind of gives Kentucky a little street cred here. This is a big deal. I honestly, there's been times you and I talk and I'm like, yeah, Kentucky's just like in the middle. They're in the middle. They're just there. But I think this was a really important win for them to get. And props to Georgia Amore for killing it.
Kentucky could be that dark horse a little bit that you take to the Sweet 16 in your bracket. Just calling that out.
Yeah.
Because Amore has that experience and Kenny Brooks, and they bring that from last year into this year. So if they peak at the right time, Kentucky's not one to sleep on.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump into our lows, our lower seeds delivering on some upsets. First off, we have unranked Illinois beating the number 14 seed Maryland 66-65. The interesting thing here is both teams, their record is 17-5. Now, we know Maryland has played tough competition. They've played the Texas, they played the South Carolinas, right? So they've played tough competition. So I went back and I was like, who did Illinois lose to? And when you look back, they lost to a ranked Kentucky, a ranked Ohio State, a ranked Michigan State, and then their unranked losses, but the unranked losses are Washington and Minnesota. And Minnesota's been flirting with being ranked towards the end of the top 25 in and out. So in essence, they are playing and competing with talented teams and taking L's, but able to pull off an upset against the number 14 Maryland, which we know Maryland's kind of going through it now. They got some injuries, trying to bounce back, get a flow. I just found that really impressive. And we don't talk about Illinois enough, but I feel like they've grown and they've come a long way from when we first watched the Kentucky game that they played early on in the season.
Yeah, Maryland really is wounded right now too, right? They're a different team from earlier in the season with the injuries they've had. So to see Illinois take advantage of that a little bit, good for them. I think the Illinois Illini, also a team maybe you don't sleep on come tournament time.
Yep, absolutely. Jumping to our next game we wanted to just highlight is unranked Ole Miss beat number 23 Vanderbilt 76-61. Again, both of these teams have kind of been towards the top 20 to 25 or even in and out. So them battling for, just being ranked and at this point a spot in the tournament. I think that's really what they're fighting for here. So awesome to see Coach Yo get that upset and Ole Miss be able to take out Vanderbilt. Jumping to our next game, number 14 NC State was able to upset number 10 Duke, score of 89-83. Asia James led the way for the Wolfpack. This girl had 36 points, going 15 of 19 from the floor. Just talk about efficient. She missed 4 shots the whole game. And this was at NC State. We've talked about both of these teams. We even talked about it in our podcast before the game. Like, this will be a game to watch, but it might be pretty low scoring. 89-83. It's like these two teams found their offense, Sid.
I can't believe it, especially Duke, right? We're hard on them and on the offensive side. And so it's good to see them scoring some points, and then obviously a good win for NC State.
Definitely. Last game here is we just wanted to mention that number 12 Kansas State upset number 9 TCU. Now this score might shock everybody. 59-50. They held Sedona Prince to 14 points and Van Lith only had 11. That's pretty shocking. 25 points from those two. It's almost like 25 points should be each one of them. Just to highlight, Serena Sundell from Kansas State had a season high 27 points. She had 15 of those 27 coming in the third quarter after Kansas State was down 6 at halftime. And this is the part that shocks me. You have Sedona Prince in there. You have a veteran TCU team, right? A lot of them are all grad transfers, super experienced. Kansas State is missing one of their best post players. That was like a preseason a player to watch because she tore ACL. Kansas State outscored TCU 32-20 in points in the paint. I just find that shocking, and like I don't even understand how that happened.
I don't understand how that happens when you have Sedona Prince. Like, same thing when you talk about bets, like, how are you not trying to figure out how to get a lob pass to her all day? The girl's 6'7". Yeah. And she does, you mentioned it, she's more of that well-rounded post player who's going to shoot the 15-footer and all that stuff. So maybe she was shooting them outside the paint and missing them. Like, I don't know, but that seems crazy. That's a good call out.
Yeah. A great win for Kansas State. I mean, for them to be ranked number 12th right now in the polls, I think they're definitely making a splash. And again, another team just like Illinois that maybe we don't talk enough about, but we absolutely should take a peek at.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's jump into our third quarter. And this one, everyone in their mind is going to start singing this song, Feeling 22. I am not going to sing it.
Oh, listeners. Come on, Sid. I thought that's why I typed it. It says Sid. You're supposed to do it, no?
Yeah, no, it's not like I don't like Taylor Swift in the song. It's just my singing voice. I was a basketball player. We're going to put it that way. So Feeling 22 here. And this day, February 2nd, 2/2, it's just all themed 22. So we're going to talk about Asia Wilson and Caitlin Clark also who wear jersey number 22. So let's talk about South Carolina, number 2 in the country, 21-1 record, beating Auburn, who has an 11-11 record, so not all that great here, but they did beat them 83-66 on the day Asia Wilson's jersey retirement happened at South Carolina. So a big day for Asia Wilson. Obviously, to get your jersey in the rafters anywhere is a big deal, but at South Carolina, that's amazing right now.
Well, and Asia Wilson, have a statue. You might as well have your jersey retired, right?
Yeah, exactly. She does. She's one of the best players to ever play the game. So an amazing accomplishment for her. In this game, Auburn's Gaston put up a tough 31 points against South Carolina. No easy feat there. Joyce Edwards for South Carolina came off the bench and was leading scorer with 18 points. South Carolina's second leading scorer also coming off the bench. So we talk about the depth for South Carolina a lot. Malaysia Fawiley had 17 points. And Asia Wilson's number 22 jersey of the 2017 National Championship and 3-time WNBA MVP now up there in the rafters. Congrats to Asia Wilson.
Yeah, huge accomplishment. Absolutely warranted. Isn't it kind of crazy, the timing of all this? Like, Asia's jersey could have been retired like a year or two earlier. Do you know what I mean? I just find that interesting that it's all in good time and it's when it's supposed to happen. But I just find it interesting because she's been dominating the WNBA and now she's going to have her own signature shoe coming out. Super excited for her, rightfully so. She's killing it. She's a beast.
It was almost like Sunday was a battle of the networks because Asia Wilson got all the hype around her jersey retirement. And then you switch networks and then we switch over to Caitlin Clark. And so USC was at Iowa for this game during Caitlin Clark's jersey retirement day. Number 4 USC, they were coming into this one 19-1. So they had only lost one game to yours truly, Notre Dame. So number 4 in the country coming into Iowa. And we've covered Iowa a ton on here. Very up and down this season. Jan Jensen taking over, Caitlin Clark, Gabby Marshall, Kate Martin, all those veterans that had left from last year. So kind of a little bit of a rebuild here for Iowa. Obviously, some of those other players are returning also, but lost a lot of star power. Lucy Olson comes in, and she's able to pick up a little bit where Caitlin Clark left off for Iowa, but not as big of as a presence. So to see her step up in this game was amazing to me. Lucy Olson had 28 points. She went 10 for 18 from the floor as unranked Iowa, who had a string of losses to IU, Illinois, Nebraska, and Oregon, were able to knock off USC in this game. So a big win for the Hawkeyes. And on the day of Caitlin Clark's jersey retirement. So that's just like awesome for the Hawkeye Nation. Everyone that turned up for that game. The gym looked insane. The 6th man was arguably the 2 man, like the 1 or 2 man. Like it just looked like it was a Caitlin Clark era game. Like Caitlin Clark herself was on the floor. That's how much the fans were into this one. And I thought it made a huge difference in this game for the Hawkeyes versus the Trojans.
Yeah, I just think USC struggled, couldn't buy a bucket, literally could not buy a bucket. Lots of money wouldn't buy a bucket for them. Ending the first quarter down 4-18. And honestly, if Juju hadn't hit the three at the end, it would have been 1-18. When would we ever say that USC is only scoring 1 point or less than 5? I just it was rough. It was absolutely rough. We did mention in one of our previous episodes, it'll be interesting to see USC as they're doing the Midwest tour and how they're going to play at Iowa, being their first time there. The atmosphere is always jacked through the roof. Plus, you top it with the Caitlin Clark jersey retirement, so she's there. They're panning on her. That they have celebrities in the stands. It just, the vibe there was Hawkeye Nation, through and through. I will say it was awesome to see after the game, the whole USC bench stayed to watch the jersey retirement, to hear Caitlin speak, to also show her love from an opponent standpoint because they respect her game and what she's done. And they could have been sour. They could have went to the locker room and pouted because I don't know, they just got their second loss of the season to an unranked Iowa team. But no, they sat there because they just understood that moment and how historic it was. And I just thought it was absolutely awesome. Very classy of USC and also classy of Iowa. The whole shindig was top tier. Clark came out there, had a nice speech, thanked everyone and then some. And it's just great for the game. Props to her. See, her jersey retired the immediate next year. Perfect timing.
There you go. A little sooner than Asia's there. Well, let's talk about the three people in the gym that day. So Caitlin Clark, obviously, Juju Watkins, and who's the third person I'm going to mention? And why would I mention this third person?
Oh, you're going to mention Lucy Olson.
Yeah.
Because those were the top three scorers from last year that led the NCAA. So how amazing for them to all be in the same gym, almost all in different roles, right? Juju's the only one that's a bit consistent. But how cool is it that Lucy Olson came over, kind of, we say replace Caitlin Clark, but she didn't, and that's been known. It's not one for one. But for Caitlin Clark to be there having such a historic moment, Lucy Olson to show up, ball out, have 28 points, and get their Hawkeyes a win during this game, and then for Juju to do her thing after struggling from going 8 for 22 from the floor, still having 27 points, and then the respect that whole USC team shows of staying on the court, clapping for him, showing Caitlin love, and I just think it was top notch the whole time. All right, let's jump into our fourth quarter. We always told you that we'd bring you some in the news, some gossip, or some drama. This is absolutely one that's it was pretty hot last week. Had a couple other coaches comment on it, so we wanted to just dedicate a quarter to it, bring it to everyone's attention, and talk through it. So Ole Miss played Vandy. This was an upset, right? So unranked Ole Miss ended up beating Vandy, and the announcer, who was an ESPN SEC announcer, said some things that probably didn't go over very well. No, I know they didn't go over very well. So I'm just going to read through, talk about what he meant, what he said, and then Coach Yo's response, and then Dawn Staley weighed in as well. So the announcer referred to Coach Yo as an acquired taste because of her style and presence on the sidelines. Those remarks absolutely sent people over the edge and rubbed them the wrong way, rightfully so. The criticism came after Coach Yo called a late timeout with her team leading by 15 points. The broadcast crew member seemed to take offense by that move, saying, Coach Yo with a quick timeout before the turnover. I say this respectfully, and she's done an incredible job. 3 consecutive NCAA tournaments, but what I can see why some of Coach Yo would have to be an acquired taste. It's a lot of bombastic motions on the sidelines and all that sort of stuff. Working the officials, timeouts when you're up by 15 points, all that sort of stuff. Look, you should be yourself, coach how you want to coach, but I can see where it would be an acquired taste. Now let's jump to Coach Yo's response on X. Following the game, Coach Yo said the disrespect from Vanderbilt's TV announcers was classless, unnecessary, and uncalled for. I'm truly grateful for my growth in these days and times, so that's all I'm going to say about it. God bless. Obviously, this announcer felt some sort of way about her calling a timeout being up 15, right? And anybody can interpret that many different ways. But I think to go out on a limb as an announcer and say it's looked at, it's frowned upon, or she did it maliciously to make a showing of it when you don't really know why. Coaches are doing 1,000 things a minute in a game. So Coach Yo responded. Again, regarding the timeout, she went to Twitter, aka X, and said, me when I'm trying to avoid a turnover because we were being pressed with 15 seconds to go, which I don't have a problem with. So I call a timeout, but the announcer uses that as an opportunity to take a shot at me. So here's Coach Yo realizing her team is about to have another turnover, and she's just coaching to coach. Coaches never stop. At this point, they could be up 100, and I guarantee you, if this was Pat Summitt, she would call a timeout, get her team aligned, because it's about the lesson learned in that moment, not what it is painted or looked at from afar and above from people who aren't in the game and understand. So obviously Coach Yo is responding, and, she doesn't have to validate why she and what she did. She's a coach. She has her rhyme and reason. But, when Dawn Staley speaks up, a lot of people listen. So she took to X and said, woke up this AM to this and came back to it because it's just wrong. A personal attack of one of our own is a personal attack on all of us, including who you are broadcasting for. Coach Yo, keep being your authentic self. Broadcaster, keep being yourself because we see you. A lot there to go through. And again, I think a lot of this is somebody assuming someone's actions meaning something else and using their platform to speak on it. And I honestly, it was just poor taste. It absolutely was. So Sid, what do you think?
Yeah, this is the drama that we knew would come up at some point throughout the season, drama like this, right? And I think this is a good one to talk about. I don't think it looks good when it's a man saying this about a woman, and it's our game. That's how I feel. Like, we have fought so hard to put women's basketball on the map and to bring it to where it is. So for a man to make a comment like this during the game, it upsets me. I mean, I think Coach Yo is an amazing coach. We talk about her a ton on here. How we respect what she brings, how we actually respect her style. So for him to knock that style and say she's maybe a little too into it, bombastic, I think was the word that was used, is crazy to me. You've got to look back at some of the history of our game, and you think she's bombastic? Did you watch Pat Summitt coach at any point? I mean, she would scream at the top of her lungs at people. What would he have said then? I just think.
What about Kim Mulkey? She's
right.
Sometimes I feel like she's gonna punch a ref. Like that's she's getting into it over there.
I mean, she's knocking clipboards out of Simone Augustus's hand, who's like a legend in the game. I just think that it's not a good look, especially coming from a man, when we need men to be advocates for women right now. And honestly, my first thought, and I don't really think this, but my first thought is women are playing the game. Let women officiate the game. Let women coach the game. Let women broadcast the game. If you're not going to raise us up like we like to raise ourselves up, don't be a part of it. So, and I'm not saying you can't say anything negative, but this tone and the amount that he went off on Coach Yo, I just think is unacceptable. And I don't think it's a positive thing for our game. And if it's not a positive thing for our game overall right now, leave. And that's kind of where I'm at. So, and I really respect Dawn for stepping up right away, using her platform and using her voice to squash what that guy said. And I think a lot of people, like you said, get behind Dawn and they listen to Dawn. And I thought that was huge leadership for her to step up and say what she said.
Absolutely. Coach Yo, support you. Keep being you and keep rocking that Ole Miss program because you're making waves and it's very commendable and people realize it.
And I guarantee she's won a lot more games than that guy has.
Definitely. All right, let's go into a quick overtime. We just want to highlight some of the upcoming matchups. Folks, it's a big weekend full of great games. So please tune in. We will be. Saturday, we have number 12 Kansas State taking on number 25 Oklahoma State. We also have number 7 USC taking on number 8 Ohio State. That's going to be a good one. USC still kind of making their rounds in the Big 10 conference there, trying to bounce back from that loss against Iowa, and Ohio State's trying to come back from that loss against UCLA. Jumping to Sunday, number 21 California versus number 3 Notre Dame, number 2 South Carolina versus number 4 Texas. Another big top 5 matchup there. South Carolina's kind of rolling since that loss from UCLA, but Texas obviously can they're up and down too. It depends on how people are shooting the ball that night. Number 14 NC State plays number 22 Florida State, and then number 19 Tennessee plays number 6 LSU. Another good one. Sid, what do you think of these? Which one are you taking a peek at, and who you rocking with?
That South Carolina Texas game is one that I'm circling. That's going to be fun. That's at 2:00, like you said, on ESPN on Sunday. I also look at all these and I'm like, thank God they're all before the Super Bowl on Sunday, because we could watch a lot of women's basketball and then watch the Super Bowl. I mean, that's a full fun day of sports right there. Notre Dame Cal is an interesting one. It's sold out in South Bend from what I've heard. So I think it's going to be rocking in South Bend there. That's going to be a fun one. I think Notre Dame will win that one, but it might be a close game, closer than we think. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch also. And then Tennessee, LSU, Tennessee coming off of a big win here from UConn. Can they keep the momentum going and knock off LSU? They had lost to LSU a few weeks ago, really not that long ago, with a buzzer beater. So how much have they learned since then? And can they come at Kim Mulkey and Flage and Morrow and all those girls and knock them off? We'll see. That's going to be a barn burner potentially again.
Yeah, and I think we dug into quite a bit today. I know that was a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff happening in women's basketball. We have big, huge games that we have to kind of dig into. We had Tennessee upset UConn. We had the highs and lows. We have girls having 53-point performances. We have some consistent unranked upsets happening. We also have Feelin' 22, where we have 2 of our stars from the past, not so long ago, but Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson having their jersey retired, plus Iowa upsetting USC. And then we have some in the news where we had a commentator who was not so nice, and he's going to learn his lesson. So hope you all tune in this weekend, catch some of those good games that we highlighted, and we'll look forward to chat with you soon.
Yes, and just a shout out to Melissa Leckleitner, because we have a fun episode that's going to drop on Monday for a team huddle. So everyone download that episode, listen to that episode. It's a juicy one. We dig into the Notre Dame Fighting Irish for most of that episode. So that's a fun one from a fan question that's come in around the Fighting Irish there. And we also are putting together a store. So we're going to eventually have some 28.5 gear. So if you're an avid listener and want to buy some of our 28.5 gear, that's going to be set up in the next couple weeks here. So we're excited for that. Lots on the horizon here. Obviously, we have the rest of conference play, conference tournament, and then March Madness. So we're really excited for the weeks to come here.
Tune in, everybody. Get your gear. Sid and I are over here with our coffee cups and hoodies. I know you want one.
There you go. Talk to everyone soon. Thanks, Beck.
See you, Sid. That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts, where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.